As we stand upon your promise that you would guide all those in leadership position, as it says in your word, the king's heart is in the hands of the Lord. He directs it like a watercourse wherever he pleases. All a man's ways seems right to him, but the Lord weighs the heart. To do what is right and just is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. So, Father, we pray for our government leaders on both sides of this honorable house, that they will have guidable hearts. Help them to have a true sense of service. Fill them with hearty realizations that although they may exercise earthly power, you are ultimately in control of all destiny, including theirs. Fill them with a desire to obey the law of love, which transcends all man-made law. Grant them a desire to serve justice rather than convenience or personal political advantage. Surround our government leaders with good advisors. We will pray that the grace of Proverbs chapter 19, verse 20 for them. Listen to advice and accept instruction, and in the end you will be wise. We pray that you would add to their wisdom the gift of patience. As is said in Proverbs chapter 19, verse 11, a man wisdom gives him patience. It is his glory to cover an offense. Heavenly Father, help our leaders to be quick to pray, quick to deliberate, quick to advise. Help them to be slow to speak or act on impulse, out of anger, pride, greed, or desire, to strengthen their own power and control. As we look to you, we pray this to Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. The thought for today, before you be seated, will be written by Wayne Dyer. When you are able to shift your inner awareness to how you can serve others, and when you have made this your central focus of your life, you will then be in a position to know true miracles in the process towards prosperity. May God bless all.
Thank you. Good morning, members. You may be seated.
Confirmation of minutes.
Are there any amendments? If there are no amendments, I put the question that the minutes of the meeting of the first session of the 12th Anguilla House of Assembly be accepted as circulated. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it.
Oath of allegiance to new members, none. Announcements by the direction of the Speaker.
I just wish to request leave of the Assembly for a moment's silence in honor of two of Anguilla's sons of the soil, Thomas Tallboy Bryan and Morris Shamash Brooks. Both of them have made significant contributions to our island's development, and I beg leave of the Assembly for a moment's silence, please. If you're in so doing, please stand. That moment of silence starts now. God bless their souls and all who have faithfully departed. Thank you, members. You may be seated.
Papers? None. Reports from committees? None. Petitions? None. Government notices? None. Unofficial notices? None. Questions? Questions to the Honorable Premier and Minister of Health?
Honorable Member for Sandy Hill.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Question 1 for the Minister of Health, member for District 1. Whereas on 12 July 2020, a press release issued from His Excellency the Governor and the Honorable Premier entitled COVID-19 Update 12 advised that effective immediately there would be a suspension of repatriations from countries with active cases prevalence of more than 0.2%, and COVID-19 Update 13 advised that the suspension would remain in place until August 7, 2020. And whereas it is understood that there are almost 400 Anguillians currently outside Anguilla that have applied and are waiting to be repatriated. And whereas prior to the decision stated in COVID-19 Update 12, the previous Anguilla United Front administration had implemented the repatriation process with the goal that by now most of our Anguillians will have been able to return home. Almost 200 persons had been repatriated as at 12 July 2020. And whereas, as at the date of the suspension, numerous Anguillians, especially Anguillian school children / college students, wishing to return home but caught outside of Anguilla, had not been approved to return to Anguilla. And whereas the parents of these Anguillian school children, college students, have been required to undertake additional and unnecessary costs and expenses for their children to either remain in apartments or find alternate accommodations. And whereas the longer our Anguillians remain outside Anguilla and not allowed to return, the greater the risk of infection of our people. And whereas health officials in a press conference on Tuesday, 18th August 2020, the Permanent Secretary of Health, Mr. Foster Rogers, advised that most of the cases in the world would never need hospitalization, that out of every 100 persons who are positive for COVID-19, close to 90% of them may never need hospitalization, and that in fact, some may never even show symptoms. He further stated that some of the 90% may stay at home and get better, meaning that the healthcare facilities may not be overburdened for persons that may need hospitalization. And whereas the Permanent Secretary of Health, Mr. Foster Rogers, further made reference to the fact that Anguilla has 3 nurses and 2 doctors from Cuba and Ireland who are experienced in dealing with COVID-19 and infectious diseases, the amount of ventilators at the hospital, and the WHO's prerequisites for opening being met. And whereas, in a recent press conference, the elected members of government advised that the government has decided to resume repatriations of Anguillians before the quote-unquote soft opening for persons wishing to stay in villas. Can the Honorable Member for District 1 explain, given the statement made by the PS of Health in the 6th whereas clause above, what was the rationale for stopping the repatriations at such a crucial time, leaving hundreds of Anguillians stuck outside Anguilla, and thereby increasing the risk of our Anguillians becoming infected? 2, what is the average cost for an Anguillian being repatriated to have to pay for staying for 10 or 14 days in quarantine, accommodation, food, etc.? 3, has any consideration been given to the fact that those Anguillians who have had to remain outside Anguilla for an extended period may now be short of funds and unable to pay the repatriation costs? What is the plan to cater for these persons who are experiencing financial difficulties? And 4, why have our school children, college students not been given priority in being approved to return to Anguilla as was established under the previous Anguilla United Front administration? Madam Speaker, I don't know if you want me to go through all of the questions or one at a time.
What would the member prefer? To go one at a time? Yeah?
Thank you.
All at
Madam
once? Yeah, all at once.
Okay. Question 2 for the Minister of Health, member for District 1. Whereas there has been no further joint press release since COVID-19 Update 13, coming from His Excellency the Governor and the Honorable Premier since 25th July 2020, and it is now 21st August 2020. And whereas the said joint press release made no mention of a soft opening, and whereas this APM government has repeatedly announced that it is a proponent of openness, transparency, and accountability, and whereas a government press conference was held on Tuesday, 13th August 2020, wherein the parliamentary secretary in charge of economic development and tourism announced to the general public that the government would be moving forward with a quote-unquote soft opening of the villa tourism market, and the pre-registration form to initiate the process would begin this past Monday, 17th August 2020. And whereas, as a result of said announcement, many Anguillians across Anguilla have become scared, concerned, and angry that one, the announcement of the soft opening was not previously relayed to the general public before Thursday, 13th August 2020, and two, no consultation had been had with the general public to explain what is involved with the soft opening and how should the public prepare for same. Can the Honorable Member for District 1 explain why has no joint press conference been issued since COVID-19 Update 13? I understand there is a 14 since my questions were submitted, Madam Speaker. Why were health officials, i.e. Permanent Secretary of Health and or Chief Medical Officer, not present at the government press conference on Thursday, 13th August 2020, to be able to speak from a health perspective in discussing the soft opening? 3, why was there no substantive communication with the general public as to the soft opening before the announcement was made on 13th August 2020 in order to prepare the public for same? And 4, the general public would like to know how you are going to ensure that visitors staying at the villas will remain in quarantine for the entire 10 or 14-day period and be monitored 24 hours a day. And question number 3 for the Minister of Health, the member for District 1. Whereas during the election campaign, the members of the APM stated repeatedly that the money is being provided through the Anguilla Social Security Fund that was set up by the previous Anguilla United Front Administration for Qualified Persons was not sufficient to truly assist families with their financial needs. And whereas the Minister of Health made similar statements at the press conference on Tuesday, 18th August 2020, and whereas members of this APM administration during the 2020 election campaign claimed that once elected, they would increase the amount being provided to unemployed persons through the Anguilla Social Security Fund. And whereas the continued closure of the hotels necessarily means layoffs and terminations in many cases for our Anguillan employees, resulting in little or no employment and little or no income for the foreseeable future. And whereas in recent weeks, at least 2 major hotels have announced termination of employees, with there being no publicized response from government. Can the Honorable Member for District 1 advise whether this government intends to increase the amount of EC $1,000 currently paid from the Social Security funds in the near future? If yes, when will the increase take place and to what amount will it be increased to? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Member for Island Harbour, and your response.
Good morning, Madam Speaker, government ministers, opposition members, members of the House, listening audience, and the viewing gallery. The questions asked I'll start with question 1. Understanding that the 6th whereas clause in question 1 has no reference to the Permanent Secretary of Health. It seems to be the 7th whereas. I will answer assuming that's what the Honorable Member for Sandy Hill wanted to ask. The Pan American Health Organization, the World Health Organization, cites the following key factors that countries must take into account when considering a resumption in international traffic in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. 1, public health and health services capacity in the destination countries. 2, reducing the probability of importation of the virus based on origins and routes, and 3, communication capacity in countries. In order to reduce the probability of importation of cases, countries need to, 1, consider the SARS-CoV-2 virus transmission scenarios experienced by the country of departure of the traveler. Number 2, consider that the highest risk of virus importation is associated with countries experiencing community transmission. And 3, consider extremely careful any plan to resume incoming international non-essential traffic from these countries. The decision to temporarily suspend repatriations from the United States of America, United Kingdom, and the Dominican Republic were to reduce the chance of importing cases of COVID-19 while allowing time to increase testing capacity, procure proper human resource capacity to manage quarantine sites, health facilities, community surveillance, and the ports. We do remember that under the previous administration, repatriation had started with an emphasis on getting students home first, those who had been alienated abroad. And that has continued to be the emphasis since repatriation never stopped. It's most of the health authority staff who were utilized in the initial repatriation phase were transferred back to the hospital for operational reasons. This did not allow the quarantine sites to be safely managed at full capacity, and therefore that was determined that we needed to suspend repatriation from countries with high rates of prevalence.
Read your answer, because there's no debate on your answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Part 2 of the question 1, which asks what is average cost for an Anguillan being repatriated have to pay for staying for 10 or 14 days in quarantine, accommodation, food, etc. For 10 days would be $1,940 US. 14 days, $2,716 US. If there's a breakdown needed, we can provide that later. And the third part of that question, has any consideration been given to the fact that those Anguillians who've had to remain outside Anguilla for an extended period may now be short of funds and unable to pay the repatriation costs? What is the plan to cater for these persons who are experiencing financial difficulties? Anguillians who have applied to be repatriated will be given every opportunity to return in an expedited manner within the limitations of quarantine and surveillance capacity. Those who indicate difficulty covering repatriation fees will be accommodated on a case-by-case basis. And then the fourth part of the first question, why have our school children or college students not been given priority in being approved to return to Anguilla as was established under the previous AUF administration? As I stated, students continue to be prioritized. Of the 163 students who applied for repatriation, 89 have made it home. Some have had difficulty leaving the country of study due to those countries' borders being closed. Some have withdrawn their applications, and some have deferred their return because their studies were not completed. I'll move on to question number 2. Why has no joint press release been issued since COVID-19 update number 13? As the member for Sand Hill stated, COVID-19 update 14 was released. why it wasn't done before is that there has been no substantive change in the status of COVID-19 in Anguilla. Number two, why were health officials, i.e. Permanent Secretary of Health and or Chief Medical Officer, not present at the government press conference on Thursday, 13th August 2020, to be able to speak from a health perspective in discussing the soft opening? Press conference was not specific to COVID-19, but it was the government's account of its first 45 days in office. You are well aware that a meeting was held with the accommodation stakeholders on August 17th, where the Chief Medical Officer participated, and the press conference was held on August 18th, where the Chief Medical Officer and the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health participated. Third part of question 2, has any consideration been given to the fact that those Anguillians who have had, no, sorry about that. Number 3, why was there no substantive communications with the general public as to the soft opening before the announcement was made on 13th August 2020 in order to prepare the public for same? COVID-19 update 13 on July 25th indicated that visitors to villas would be considered from July 31st, 2020, while the borders remain closed at least until October 31, 2020. The time in July and early August was spent with representatives from the Anguilla Tourist Board, the Anguilla Hotel and Tourism Association, preparing protocols for reopening. The fourth part of question 2, general public would like to know how you're going to ensure that visitors staying at the villas will remain in quarantine for the entire 10 or 14-day period and be monitored 24 hours a day. In order to be approved for visitors, villa operators have to arrange security services. There'll also be police and special constable patrols, as well as monitoring and surveillance by the health teams. And then question 3 states whether to advise whether this government intends to increase the amount of EC $1,000 currently paid from the Social Security funds in the near future, and if yes, when will the increase take place and to what amount will it be increased to? Answer, this administration realizes the difficulties our people are having as we face the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. This government has continued the 1,000 EC dollars per month for those who qualify under Social Security and increased the amount from 800 EC dollars to 1,000 EC dollars for those who did not qualify under Social Security until December 31, 2020. We've also expanded the program to include persons who lost their jobs since January of 2020. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may, Madam Speaker, pursuant to Part 24 of the Legislative Assembly Procedure Rules 1976, I'm requesting that I ask just a few supplementary questions of the member for District 1 in relation to his answers.
Can those supplementary questions be in one question?
No, because they are in different questions, but it's only about 3 questions. Thank you, Madam Speaker. In relation to the answer with respect to paragraph 2 of question 1, the 10 days, the cost of a repatriated Anguillan would be $1,940, and 2 days, $2,716. I would be gratefully asked for a breakdown of that so that the general public as well may be made aware as to what those costs are attributed to. In relation to paragraph 3 of question 2, why was there no substantive communication with the general public as to the soft opening before the announcement was made on 13th August 2020? The answer in reply did not in fact answer the question because it stated that the answer stated that update 13 on July 25th indicated that visitors to villas would be considered, but the question was in relation to substantive communication with the general public so that everyone would be made aware as opposed to an update that indicates a statement. So my position on number 3 is that in fact question 3 of of question 2, number 3 of question 2 has not been answered. And so I would like to request that the Honorable Premier specifically answer the question. And the third question, in question 3, the question was again whether the government intends to increase the amount of the EC 1000 currently paid from Social Security. The response is that the government has continued the EC 1000 per month, and we have expanded the program to include persons who lost their jobs. But again, the question has not been answered. The specific question is whether this government intends to increase the amount of EC 1000 currently paid from the Social Security funds. And so I would like clarification on specifically the last 2 questions. Thank you.
In response to the first supplementary question, the breakdown of those numbers would include the accommodation, food, testing, and the specific numbers. I did not request the specific numbers as to what each would be. However, those are available with the Ministry of Health. My understanding of the question was what was the cost. The total cost also includes nursing surveillance, security, etc. If the member would like to get those specific breakdown, it can be provided later. And the second question pertaining to substantive why was there no substantive communication? I would have to ask the member to define what is meant by substantive. I think that we had alerted the general public that they would be opening up to visitors coming to Anguilla. In terms of the details, those were worked on. And when they were available and ready, that's when we came out and talked about it in a more substantive manner, if she means that we were able to define more clearly the soft opening. And that was done with the accommodation stakeholders on the 17th of August, and then in a widely broadcast press conference on the 18th of August. In terms of the third supplementary, this administration, when it came into government on when we were elected on the 26th and 29th of June and took office, the financial position in Anguilla was such that we did not feel that we could increase the amount from 1,000 EC dollars, which we would like to do. That's still something that we would like to do as the financial position improves. At this point, it could not be. We did, however, increase from 800 to 1,000 for those who did not qualify under the Social Security benefit. This government has taken the responsibility that while previously Social Security fund covered the $1,000 to those who qualified under Social Security, this government has taken the responsibility to cover the $1,000 for those who qualify under Social Security and also $1,000 for those who don't. And so that has increased the burden on this administration to be able to carry on that program and extend it from the initial 3 months that the previous administration had it for to the end of December. We also, in doing that, found that there were only those who qualified from March 1st because of the previous policy, and we extended that to make it so that persons who were not working prior to March 1st would still have a chance to qualify for the 1,000 EC dollars a month. I hope that that is sufficient to answer the questions as asked. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I don't know the member for District 1, thank you for responding, did ask for me to define what substantive communication with the general public meant so that he could better answer the question.
He answered the question, though? Did
No,
you
he
gain some
asked-
significant information from his answer?
Well, what he said was that if I could further define, and then he repeated what he had said in his original response. So just to provide further clarification so that he can answer the question. When the question asks about there was no substantive communication with the general public, was not necessarily limited to a press release
On a
that
point
was
of
sent
order,
out.
Madam Speaker. The member for District 2 is engaging into a debate. The rules does not allow for debate on a question.
Member, I take your consideration. However, the member did ask for explanation to the meaning of what she meant by substantive communication. So, and she said that is what she was trying to explain. So that I can allow. But that will be the end of it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I was explaining, the definition of substantive communication with the general public is that the expectation would have been that other than just a general press release that was issued in July 25th, as indicated in the answer, indicating that there would be a soft opening, the expectation from the general public would have been that there would have been widespread consultation, discussion, meetings with the general public, and not specifically just industry officials, to be able to prepare them and warn them and alert them to the fact that there was going to be a soft opening of the villas to allow persons that are not Anguillians but are coming to stay in Anguilla for a longer period of time to come into Anguilla. So that was what I meant by substantive communication. So that is a question that I'm seeking an answer to. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
The question was given, yes.
Madam Speaker, I think that persons can determine how much consultation they have with stakeholders, with the general public. We feel that it is necessary when we come to the general public that we have all the information that we feel they would want to know. And so we were working on the protocols on what would be best practice. We worked with the Ministry of Health. We worked with the Chief Medical Officer. We worked with the stakeholders in the industry. And then we announced to the public the plans that were in place at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Questions to the Honorable Minister for Commerce, Trade and Investment.
Honorable Member at Large, Mr. Joseph Antapool.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning, Madam Speaker. Good morning to my fellow parliamentarians, and good morning to all Anguillians listening, whether near or far. My questions this morning is for the Honorable Minister of Economic Development and Natural Resources, elected island-wide member, the Honorable Mr. Kyle Hodge. Whereas a letter dated July 31st, 2020, in relation to the development of a Category 5 proof agricultural project here in Anguilla was signed by the minister to whom the question is directed, And whereas the minister expressed that this administration is not in support of this project, citing that if the company was prepared to partner with Anguillians, the proposition would have been considered more acceptable. And whereas a response was sent to the minister by the company's director on August 7th, 2020, a copy of which is attached. Madam Speaker, if I may stop here. When I submitted my questions to the clerk, I also submitted it with a copy of said letter because I would like to refer to the letter to provide some context to the listening public.
Member, the rule states that you should read your question and there should be a response in writing that he will read to you. So we follow the rules. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll look to provide the listening public with that information in an alternative route. I'll continue. And whereas the said letter cited that a member of the government's political party who would have contested the 2020 general elections was one of the first to, and I quote, indicate a serious interest in co-investing, end of quote, and whereas evidence was provided of trying to partner with several local persons who were ultimately unable to meet the capital requirements, and whereas 98% of the agricultural produce we eat is imported compared to the 2% which is grown locally, and whereas the company clearly outlines its market and strategy for competition with imports as opposed to competition with local farmers by reducing the amount of produce imported, and whereas there is a real concern related to the potential of food scarcity due to the global COVID-19 pandemic, and whereas I agree with the minister that we need to protect our local farmers and enable them with a non-hostile environment to grow, can the honorable elected island-wide member please explain the following? And Madam Speaker, I beg your permission to ask the questions and have him respond one by one for the ease and of understanding of the listening public to the responses. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question 1. Could the honorable minister please explain in detail his reasons for opposing this project when it stands to significantly improve Anguilla's food security?
Okay. Good morning, Madam Speaker. Good morning, fellow members of the House. Good morning to those listening via radio, stream. I'll answer question 1. For far too long, the culture that government of Anguilla has established to facilitate various projects has been without the establishment of sound policies and other regulatory frameworks. Emphasis should be placed on the development of these measures before allowing large projects to capitalize on our incubated state. The focus of this government is to empower local farmers to produce more, increase variety, improve quality, and increase profits. We welcome investment that will enable our local farmers to do just that.
Madam Speaker, I have a supplementary question in relation to his response to question 1. I fully respect your protectionist view towards our local farmers. And you stating your reason for opposing this project, I just find it curious because one of your reasons, which was explicitly cited in the letter.
Madam Speaker, on a point of order, that is not a question, that's a statement. You're not allowed to give a statement.
Thank you. Speak to the chair, member, but you can ask your supplementary
Madam Speaker,
question.
I'm providing context to the question that I'm about to ask. So if the honorable
ask
member
the
for Road
question.
South would be patient, he may understand where I'm going with this question. Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I was saying, Madam Speaker, he clearly outlines that this administration and his reasons for that this administration does not oppose this project. What I want to understand is, seeing that the letter clearly outlines, and his response was that the reason for not supporting it is that it's not partnering with locals. The letter in response to the minister clearly outlines that
On
the
a point
first
of order,
person
Madam Speaker.
who was
On a point of order, Madam Speaker.
What's the point of
the
order?
honorable member of Island-wide member is still making a statement. He needs to be direct and ask a supplementary question.
What is the question?
The question
do not
is,
understand
your
the point of
administration
order.
does not
There's no-
support this initiative as it stands now because it's not partnering with our locals. The first person who was approached to partner with this initiative was a member of your administration who contested the 2020 general elections and was unsuccessful. My question is, if he was successful in coming up with the capital to be able to partner with this project, would your view of supporting this be different to it is now? Because you campaigned on food security.
My view remains.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Can we move to the next question?
I take that as you never agreed with it in the first place. Thank you, Member. Question 2. While it is understandable that protection should be in place to protect the production of our local farmers, can the Minister please inform us of any alternatives that were explored, if any, before rejecting the project proposal?
My answer to question 2. There are many local farmers who now understand the importance of food security and now are desirous of transformation. Government of Anguilla is keen on using best efforts to 1. Work diligently to help all willing farmers and young entrepreneurs to establish greenhouses equipped with modern agricultural production technology throughout Anguilla. 2. Partner with local financiers to promote initiatives for funding agriculture projects. 3. Encourage groups of young people who are interested in agriculture to form co-ops to own and operate these greenhouses.
Madam Speaker, can I ask a supplementary question for clarification, please? Specifically, I would like to know, did this government at all consider the potential of, say, allowing this project to go forward with a restricted list of items that they cannot grow because that's protected for our local farmers, or even the crops that are currently grown by our local farmers but are still being imported at rates of 98%? Did this administration consider
point
putting...
of order, Madam Speaker. How many questions?
That's 2 questions.
How many questions the member want to ask?
Thank you,
It's
Member.
a question for clarity in terms
Yes,
of
but that's
what...
2 questions. Can you ask 1 question?
Would you like to answer the first one? The second one is, did you consider putting any quota systems in place to protect local farmers as opposed to rejecting this project?
Madam Speaker, we are putting together a policy to guide this industry. Thank you.
Thank
Thought
you.
the policy was already in place. Moving on, Mr. Speaker, thank you, Member, for your answer. Question.
Member, can I ask you not to respond to the member's answer? Because you're asking a question. The rule says you should rise, ask your question.
Madam Speaker, I humbly apologize both to
Please
yourself.
do not speak when I'm speaking. When I speak, you sit. Thank you. Take your mic off, please. Thank you. Now you listen. We follow the rules. You rise, you read your question, the member will answer your question. If you have a supplementary question, you rise, you ask that question, the member will answer your question. This is not a debate, it's a question. If you have any other questions, you're always welcome to bring those questions also in writing. Yes? Thank you. You may continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I humbly apologize to both yourself and the honorable member. Moving on to question 3. COVID-19 has disrupted global supply chains, with some existing supply chains for food now showing produce contaminated with the virus. Did the minister consider, before rejecting this project, its potential to provide a stable supply chain locally to reduce our dependency on imports, and how this could be critical in bolstering our COVID-19 response? If so, could the minister please elaborate as to his thought process behind this consideration and how he arrived at his decision?
Answer to the question. There is no evidence that the supply chain of food that is imported are contaminated with the COVID virus. The thought process behind rejecting this project is to protect local industry. The idea is to allow our local agriculture sector the opportunity to become a sound sector equipped with policies, regulatory frameworks, and investment opportunities beneficial to all.
Madam Speaker, I have a supplementary question. Just for clarification, you said that there's no evidence of supply chains being contaminated. Is this in specific reference to Anguilla, or is this in reference to global supply chains?
This is just in reference to the global supply chain. There's no credible stats or scientific evidence to suggest.
Thank you, member. You may continue.
Thank you, member. Question 4. What other alternative supply chains for food has the minister identified to be tapped into should our current situation deteriorate to a point where importing food becomes difficult?
The answer is, while the land in Anguilla may not be the best for farming, other farming methods are being actively encouraged. Further, our other supply chains may be found within the Caribbean region. Not approving this particular project does not mean that the government of Anguilla is not committed to food security. In fact, it is a top priority. We look forward to exploring other means of increasing food production.
Madam Speaker, a supplementary question just for clarification. The member stated that alternative methods of producing food in Anguilla are currently being explored. Just for the benefit of myself and the knowledge of the general public listening, could you list what some of these alternatives being explored are, please?
Thank you. We have our local farmers already made investments in greenhouses and already made investments in modern farming. And in short order, perhaps 2 to 3 months, you will see local farmers in business, in doing farming in modern ways.
Thank you, member. Question 5. Has the government considered partnering with this initiative in the form of a public-private partnership or otherwise, considering 1, the health benefits of fresh organic food being provided to its locals, 2, the ability of this project to grow climate-controlled foods such as blueberries, strawberries, and other items which tend to grow in colder climates, and 3, the lower cost of food to which our locals will be better empowered to buy, seeing that the food will be able to be produced at less than 10% of the cost that it currently sits at on our shelves. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member.
The answer? All the benefits of the project have been considered. However, when all factors were weighed, the project did not find favor for all the reasons previously stated.
Madam Speaker, I have no more supplementary questions. I would like to thank the member for his responses.
Thank you, honorable members.
Motions? None. Other business, government business? A bill for Quarantine Amendment Act 2020, second reading.
Honorable member for Island Harbor.
Madam Speaker, a bill for quarantine. I move that a bill for Quarantine Amendment Act 2020 have its second reading. Madam Speaker, this bill to amend the Quarantine Act of 2020 comes about because COVID-19 pandemic has affected Anguilla just like it has the rest of the world. And we have Anguillians who have to continue to be repatriated. And we also, because of the economy being in its stagnated state, we want to have visitors coming to Anguilla, but this has to be done in a safe manner for the people of Anguilla, requiring that persons have to be restricted or quarantined. At this time, the Quarantine Act states that any costs for quarantining have to be borne by the consolidated fund. Certainly, that has been done so far, but to continue the process, the government cannot continue to cover all the costs. And so we feel that it is necessary to amend the Act so that the cost incurred can be paid in part or in full by the persons coming in. The quarantine, the objects and reasons, of course, as stated, the Quarantine Amendment Bill 2020 provides for the payment by persons detained, quarantined, or isolated of expenses incurred by the quarantine authority in detaining, quarantining, or isolating such persons. Thank you.
Is there someone to second?
Madam Speaker, I rise to second the second reading.
Thank you, honorable members. I now invite debate on the merits and principles of this bill. The floor is now open for debate. Honorable member for single-wide electoral district, Jose Vanterpool.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I trust that the Honorable Minister of Finance knows why he is making this decision, and I know that it would be unrealistic to think that the government will be able to continue bearing the full burden of this cost for repatriation. Though what I have to add is more of a question that I would hope that the mover will be kind enough to reply to in his response, is you mentioned earlier that some Anguillians who return home, who say that they're not able to afford it, probably due to being stuck outside of our borders for extended periods of time and dwindling their resources, if they cannot afford the cost upon returning, you mentioned that this will be addressed on a case-by-case basis. Could you please provide us with how this consideration will be made and reassurances of how this will be done fairly across the board and that people won't be picked upon and chosen for who gets a free pass and who doesn't? That's my only concern, Madam Speaker. Other than that, I look forward to the rest of this debate.
Thank you, honorable member. Are there any other contributions? Member for Valley North.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we are in unusual and in unprecedented times. And there is no way that this government or any government can stand the burden of the repatriation of our citizens. And I fully support, Madam Speaker, the shared costs. And through you, Madam Speaker, I would like that the Minister of Finance and his administration to carefully put in place a sort of means testing for the returning residents. Because for the most part, Anguillians who may have been caught overseas, probably for health reasons and so on, and would have expended whatever resources they would have had and the procedures and so on and so forth over there. And coming back home to face this, Madam Speaker, could be a deterrent. And one must be very careful in terms of soft opening. And I wouldn't want Anguillians abroad to feel that this government or any government would be looking into allowing our visitors, our high-valued visitors, if there are such persons, to be catered for when our Anguillians are not being looked after. So I would hope that the leader of government business and his team would look very carefully at putting in place a means testing, because it isn't anything new. The Ministry of Social Development would have means testing for individuals who would want to get on the social development programs and so on and so forth. And it's a real issue that we need to look at, because there are struggling Anguillians out there who would have difficulty in addressing what it is. So I would want the government to be able to look at that and really and truly be mindful of the hardships that are out there. But there are difficulties, there are financial difficulties, and those of us who would have been part of the previous administration, and those of us who would have lived in Anguilla and are living through these difficult times would understand that the government's revenue is not from the ministers and the elected representatives, but the revenue is generated from the taxpayers. So I want the leader of government business and his team to be very mindful of it. A lot of times, governments in office would get blamed for a lot of things, but make sure, through you, Madam Speaker, that a leader of government business would put together a team of civil servants that would be very sensitive to the situation that is before us and to our returning residents and Anguillians. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Are there any other contributions? If there are no other contributions, can I ask the mover to please respond?
Madam Speaker, I just rise to give a very short contribution to the bill at this point, right before the mover moves it. As many members in Parliament this morning may have acknowledged, this is a balancing exercise that has to be undertaken. We understand the situation in Anguilla in relation to our loss of revenues, and we also understand the situation in relation to our Anguillian citizens who are waiting to be repatriated at home. This administration has decided to look with compassion upon those who want to enter into Anguilla. There are a lot of countries in the region at the moment, Trinidad and Tobago, for instance, that have issued a blanket statement saying that they will not be repatriating citizens from overseas because they wish simply to control what's happening in their borders. The position of this administration, Madam Speaker, has been to look at all Anguillians as important in this exercise, which is why we have developed the policy that we have in relation to repatriation. We understand the financial bind that we're in, and that is why we are advocating for a policy that looks at a case-by-case basis. It is means tested to allow us to be able to safely repatriate our citizens home while still keeping an eye on the finances of the government of Anguilla. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Member for Road South.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I just want to rise in support of this amendment, taking into consideration the fact that our learned members on the other side of the divide would have been in government and would have known that once government sets the policy, it's the members of the Anguilla Public Service who carries out the directive. And unlike the past, the members of this side, Madam Speaker, do not get involved in things that they should not get involved in. But I also want to say, Madam Speaker, in support of this, when the Honorable Island-wide, single island-wide candidate said, and I quote, "I hope that the honorable member for District 1 knows why he's making this decision." I take offense to that, Madam Speaker, given the fact that the honorable member for District 1...
Madam Speaker, on a point of order.
You got to get up on a point of order. Learn the rules, man.
Madam Speaker, on a point of order, And for a point of clarification, I simply said that it's a point of order for clarification. I said
Speaker, you got to say what your point of order is.
Please, members.
one member standing at a
please.
time. I said that I trust that the Honorable Premier, Minister of Finance, knows why he made this decision. I in no way question his decision, and I actually support it because I understand his decision.
Madam Speaker, I don't know what the point of order is, but be that as it may, Madam Speaker, the fact remains that he said, and I quote, Madam Speaker, I wrote it verbatim, Madam Speaker, and we are equipped with technology. I asked the clerk of the House, Madam Speaker, last week that we must equip this Parliament with the technology, and afterwards he can go back. And I will repeat again, Madam Speaker, he said, and I quote, I trust that the Honourable Member for District 1 knows why he is making this decision, end of quote. That's what he said, Madam Speaker. So he's questioning the ability, the intelligence of the Honourable Member for District 1, who is not only a doctor by profession and a former dentist, but highly intelligent, compassionate, and have a love for people that is unprecedented, Madam Speaker. So I rise in support of this. And I also want to say, when we speak about means testing and so forth, I always believe that once, and I said this before, once policy is set, once legislation is set, then it is for those that are tasked with policing and enforcement to do so. It's tantamount to the government of Anguilla making it illegal to drive on the right side of the road. And then persons are driving on the right side of the road, Madam Speaker, and persons are saying, but look what the government is allowing them to do, drive on the left side of the road when the law now says to drive on the right side of the road. It's not the elected members to police the law, but to ensure that the law is passed through Parliament, and then those that are tasked with the responsibility of enforcement, of implementation, do so. And I know at least 1, 2, 3 members on the other side is fully aware that this is the case, Madam Speaker. So again, I rise in support, 100% in support of this amendment that was being put forward by the Honourable Member for District 1. And I hope that my esteemed colleague on the other side will take some time out to learn the rules of procedure and do so. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member. Member for West End.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of this motion. But what I also would like to do, Madam Speaker, is to appeal to the Anguillan general public, because I think when we talk about a love for Anguillians or Anguilla, wherever you are, if you're an Anguillian, home is the place that's closest to your heart. And we've got a number of our people, Anguillians, that are stuck overseas for one reason or another. And I don't think that the cost should be an issue. When I say the cost should be an issue, if we consider that Anguillians who are here and have been in a safe environment for the past 5 months must thank God to be in this environment. For Anguillians who are overseas, they're the ones who on a daily basis are praying to be allowed to come home and have the opportunity to come home. And whether it's $2,000 US that they have not had the ability to receive because they've been stuck overseas, I think that is something the government really should have a look at, not to put our people who are overseas be penalized because they were stuck overseas. Financial, of course. Any and everybody would say that they're struggling and they know the future is going to be a bit of a challenge. So I would like to think that the government could seriously consider, when you talk about what Social Security is giving to our people, what government is upping from 800 EC to 1,000, consider those who needs to come home. But they too have been paying out probably more than the Anguillans who've been here. So I think that is something that government should really consider, that whether you're here or overseas, you're still Anguillan, and everybody wants to be home in a time of crisis. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Are there any other contributions? Member for Sandy Hill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I too rise to support the amendment to the Quarantine Act. And as I was sitting listening this morning, Madam Speaker, I was very heartened to hear the support coming from the opposition benches for this amendment. And what it says, Madam Speaker, is that it is true that this opposition does not intend to oppose for opposing's sake. We intend to oppose when it is necessary, when it is right, and when it is just to do so. But on this occasion, Madam Speaker, in relation to this particular amendment, we know, having been in government for the previous 5 years, that it is in fact necessary, and it would have been necessary that at some point in time there would have to be a cost attributed to the repatriation efforts. But Madam Speaker, my concern is in relation to what appears to be inconsistency in information that is going out from the government side. And I would implore the Premier, the member for District 1, and in fact his entire government, to engage again in consultation with the general public. And I've always been a believer, Madam Speaker, in consultation to ensure that our people are aware of what is happening, especially in times like these, Madam Speaker, where we are suffering from COVID-19 in the wider world. The previous Anguilla United Front administration was successful in keeping it at bay and in addressing the 3 persons that were infected here in Anguilla. And as we move forward during this COVID process, we have to continue to keep the people engaged. And that is the only way that you're going to have support from the people of Anguilla. And I looked at the COVID-19 update number 14. And it says that for persons required to quarantine at a government-run facility, this charge will be US $1,500 for individuals and US $2,000 for families up to 4 persons. Now, this press release would have gone out yesterday evening, Madam Speaker, after the questions would have come to the House. And the response today was that for returning Anguillians, the cost for 10 days will be US $1,940, and for 14 days, US $2,716. And these were the figures that were brought forward by the member for District 1 this morning. And so, Madam Speaker, already between yesterday evening and this morning, the comments that I received was, how is it that returning Anguillians have to pay more than persons that are visiting our shores? And so if it is that there is an inconsistency between the press release and the figures quoted this morning, I think we ought to let the public be aware, allow the distinction to be made. And I want to pick up an additional point made by the member of West End. I too, while I believe that there should be a charge, I think that there should be consideration for categories of persons. So for instance, college students, returning students. I think that the government ought to consider whether or not if we are having this soft opening and you're looking at costs being attributed, whether or not some of that cost for returning Anguillians can be cut in half, can be reduced, can be made more, allowed for persons to be able to pay. So for instance, as opposed to $1,500, if they can pay $750 for the time that they are in quarantine. I don't know, I haven't run the figures. But I would say, Madam Speaker, that there has to be special consideration for our returning Anguillians. The cost of $1,940 for 10 days has our people complaining already. Much less for 14 days, $2,716. And while we understand the cost that the government bears, we need to take into consideration, take into account that our people stuck outside Anguilla have run down on their funds as well and may not have access to those funds. And so I think we do need to go further than a means test. We need to look at giving consideration, if possible, as much as necessary, to returning Anguillians in terms of being able to offer a reduced rate for those figures that I've stated. And I said, once again, I just want to emphasize there seems to be an inconsistency. If I'm wrong, I would be glad to be corrected between the press release that was issued yesterday evening, the figures of 1,500 and 2,050, and the 1940 and US 2007-16 that was quoted today. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I recognize the Honorable Member for Single Island Wide Electoral District, the Honorable Quincy Agams-Marie.
Good morning, Madam Speaker, formally, and I too rise in support of this bill. Consultation. Madam Speaker, in a matter of a public health crisis, the primary mode of consultation must be with the experts making the decisions in relation to the crisis. What we must then do following that consultation with the experts is to express further communication with the people of the island. And I find it interesting, perhaps ironic, that in this honorable house we have members of the opposition talking about consultation when the very doors of this house can tell me different. Consultation did occur, and as it is a fluid situation, consultation will be ongoing. But you cannot come to the people with information. And information sharing did occur, and it will be ongoing. But you cannot come to the people with information until the proper level of consultation occurs. And that is what happened. Madam Speaker, on a point of clarification, for my members on the opposition side, what the Honorable Member for District 1 was saying is the costs of government for the different categories of people. So it costs the government $1,940 to cover a 10-day stay, and it costs the government $2,716 for a 14-day stay, and that is per individual. What we are proposing in future is that persons wishing to repatriate to Anguilla will pay $600 or $1,000 for home quarantine and $1,600 for individual. Sorry? $1,500, sorry. So $600 for home quarantine for individual and $1,500 for government quarantine for an individual. That is the figures. The government...
On a point of order, Madam Speaker, the member, the island-wide member, seems to be making reference to a question that was asked and answered by the member for Island Harbor. In terms of the average cost for an Anguillian, the figures that I quoted earlier was in response to the answer that was given. The point of order, Madam Speaker, is I'm questioning whether or not the member, the island-wide member, is disagreeing with the answers that were provided by the member for District 1. Yes, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I am clarifying because at the end of the honorable member's presentation, she did say, if she is wrong, please correct her. So I was doing her the favor. But if she does not accept the correction, so the clarification is on the point of her last statement saying that we are charging Anguillians $1,940. We are not. This was the cost of quarantine. This is the cost that government currently incurs. That is the total cost being presented, Madam Speaker. Now, may I continue? But I want to talk briefly on how we got here today to this bill, because there were no parameters around the inception of quarantine or the idea of quarantine, in that the government did not take the fiscally responsible position of setting out how much it can afford for quarantine. It instead invited persons to tell government how much they will charge the government for quarantine. And as a result, the numbers racked up and racked up and racked up till it costs approximately $3,000 a person for a 14-day quarantine. So now we are at a position where we cannot even go out there and say, we will put these parameters down and reduce quarantine and cover quarantine as a government. We are now bound by the poor decision-making that preceded us to now decide that we cannot even cover the cost. The costs going, the previous government, the costs going forward, Madam Speaker, will be approximately $4.4 million. This small request will not even cover a fraction of that. If we were in a position, if we were given a position by the previous administration where this program could have been extended, we would have done so. And you will see, Madam Speaker, that there was no opposition on the opposition side, because they know the poor decisions that led us here. Madam Speaker, I am not happy to be in this House this morning to debate a bill that will send on a cost to Anguillians wishing to return home. Persons have to pack up. Persons have to pay for flights and then still pay for quarantine upon arrival. And these persons are Anguillians. But I did want to take a moment to talk about the decisions or the recklessness that led us here in the first place. Obviously, we would not have been able to continue this indefinitely. But it is the decisions and recklessness that led us here today on Friday the 21st. We could have extended it. We could have instead been here in October. But just the day, Madam Speaker, that we are here, 6 weeks after being elected by the people of Anguilla, it shows a lack of foresight. The mistakes that we have been tasked, the many mistakes that we have been tasked to correct, and this is the first of many. But we gave an oath, we made an oath to the people of Anguilla to protect them and to be transparent. And so I guess the word consultation is perhaps being fuddled with the word proper information sharing. This is the information. So when you, Madam Speaker, not you personally, but persons in this House, go out there to share the information surrounding this cost, I only ask that they share the full story. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I recognize the Honorable Member for Single Island-wide Electoral District, Mr. Kenneth Hodge.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. Good morning to members of the House. Quite a lot has been said this morning about this bill, and so I'm going to be very brief. But the point I would like to make here this morning, Madam Speaker, is that persons need to understand that we are setting some figures and charges here today that are in no way indicative of the true costs of this service. And I'm aware that many Anguillians are still overseas wanting to return home. And indeed, Madam Speaker, in my position as Minister of Labor and Immigration, I continue to receive considerable phone calls, WhatsApps, and other messages from Anguillians overseas. They all want to return home. And we are committed, Madam Speaker, to facilitating this request in a safe manner. My colleague has alluded perhaps to the reckless disregard or the reckless spending, the lack of foresight that would have put us in a precarious financial position. And I know at some point this government will be speaking in depth about this, but we have to be cognizant, Madam Speaker, that we are here today. We could have been in a better financial position to be in a position to offer better quality of service to our people. And we must be very grateful here at this point as well to the British government for really providing these funds to Angola in this time of need, that we can begin to continue to offer this service. I think it is important, Madam Speaker, for Anguillians to understand that it is our desire, it is our wish that we're going to get everybody back home as quickly as possible. And so when persons are being asked to pay some contribution, and I call it a small contribution, to the repatriation effort, that persons would understand that it's a contribution and not a true representation of the economic costs. When we look at our health service workers, Madam Speaker, and this government basically almost every week, 2 and 3 meetings with our health professionals getting updates, and we can see the tremendous work, the tremendous efforts that they are making in helping to keep our borders safe. We have to be very thankful to them. And so I remind Anguillians as I close again that this bill here this morning is here to allow for a contribution, a small contribution, towards helping to defray some of these costs. But at the end of the day, it will never be a true reflection of what these costs really are. Madam Speaker, I thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Are there any other contributions? If there are no other contributions, can I invite the mover to please respond?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank all those who have made contributions and participated. Certainly, it's good to hear from the other side that they are cognizant of the need for this bill. Others have mentioned about the means testing in response to previous question asked how we would determine accommodating Anguillians who want to come home who may have financial difficulties. Certainly that will be a directive given to those in the public service tasked with that mission. To date, we have Anguillians repatriated exceed 270. As of this point, we still haven't had any positive cases since the first 3 back in March, and those have recovered. And we would like to maintain that status, and that is why quarantining is necessary. Testing before arrival, testing on arrival, and then testing at 10 or 14 days, 10 days for those who come from low prevalence areas, and then 14 days quarantine for those who come from a higher prevalence than the 0.2% prevalence rate. There was a little confusion regarding the cost. My interpretation of the question asked earlier was what the actual costs are for accommodation and food, and that's what I was giving. But in terms of the fees that will be charged to Anguillians coming home, those are much less than the numbers, and those were borne out in COVID-19 Update 14, which was sent out yesterday. And so again, I'd like to thank the members, and thanks there for the support of this bill, and ask that we proceed with the bill to get it passed. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable members, for your contributions. It has been moved and seconded that a bill entitled Quarantine Amendment Act 2020 be now read a second time. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those against say no. The ayes have it. I call upon the clerk to read the bill a second time.
An act to amend the Quarantine Act, revised statutes of Anguilla, Chapter Q5.
Under Rule 54 of the Legislative Assembly Procedure Rules, the bill now stands referred to a committee of the whole Assembly to be considered clause by clause. Assembly and committee.
Clause 1.
Are there any amendments? Clause 1.
Put the question.
Questions?
Aye.
Those against, say no.
Clause 2.
Yes. Madam Speaker, in Clause 2, where it says Section 1A, notwithstanding Section 1, the quarantine authority may require persons who are detained. We wish to change that to shall. May to shall.
I put the question that Clause 2
Madam Chair, after discussion, I wish to withdraw the amendment and leave it as may.
I put the question that clause 2 do stand part of the bill. That's without amendment. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Any amendments? Put the question that clause 3 do stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it.
The title?
I put the question that the title do stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The Assembly will now resume its sitting.
Madam Speaker, I beg to report that the bill entitled Quarantine Amendment Act 2020 passed through committee without amendment and is ready for its third reading.
A bill for Quarantine Amendment Act 2020, third reading.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the bill entitled Quarantine Amendment Act 2020 be read a third time and passed.
Is there someone to second?
I raise the second, Madam Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that a bill entitled Quarantine Amendment Act 2020 be now read a third time and passed. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. I call upon the clerk to read the bill a third time.
An act to amend the Quarantine Act, revised statutes of Anguilla, Chapter Q5.
Bill read a third time and passed.
A bill for Business License Moratorium Amendment Act 2020, second reading.
Honorable Member for Single Island Wiley Electoral District, Kyle Hodge.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move that a bill for the Business License Moratorium Act be moved to have its second reading. I'll read the objects and reasons of this bill. The Business License Moratorium Bill seeks to impose a moratorium on the issuance of licenses under the Trade, Businesses, Occupation and Professions Licensing Act to carry on any trade, business, occupation, or profession, and to give a discretion for policy reasons in the meantime to the Permanent Secretary after consultation with the Minister of Trade and Commerce to grant such licenses in the interim, whilst a complete review and revision of the legislative regime under which such licenses are granted is undertaken. So I invite members of the House, I guess, to debate. Okay, all right. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Can someone, is there a seconder? Someone to second this bill?
I raise the second motion, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. I now invite debate on the merits and principles of this bill. The floor is open for contributions. Contributions, members? Okay, then I will ask the mover to proceed.
Madam Speaker, I wish to make some comments. I don't know how long it will take, but I don't have a time limit, right? Do I have a time limit? Okay. But I wish to highlight and point out some stuff here, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we are here dealing with government business, the business of the people. This bill, Madam Speaker, is an extension of the previous moratorium for business licenses. This is necessary, Madam Speaker, while we carefully draft a new Business License Act. It is important, Madam Speaker, to note, because I've been getting a lot of calls, I've been getting a lot of messages from the public. So it's important to note that this moratorium does not restrict applicants from applying for business licenses. It does not restrict foreign direct investment or foreign direct investors from investing in Anguilla. It just allows, Madam Speaker, for us to carefully approve businesses during this 1-year period. During the moratorium phase, applications can be approved or denied by the Permanent Secretary after consultation with the Minister of Commerce, Trade, and Investment. The past government, the previous government, would have implemented the moratorium for a 1-year period. But when that period was up, Madam Speaker, they had nothing to bring to the House to move it forward into law. In fact, Madam Speaker, I don't even recall any public consultation taking place during that 1-year moratorium. Madam Speaker, this administration sees the importance of transparency, accountability, and keeping the people involved. We said it on the campaign, and we meant it. The business community will be involved. The Chamber of Commerce will be involved. The people of Anguilla, Madam Speaker, will be involved in this process. This is the democracy, and we will always come to the people with important documents such as this. Madam Speaker, during this 1-year moratorium, this administration will seek to address in the new Business License Act, fronting the formalization of the creative economy. And to me, the most important part is to secure certain sectors of our economy for Anguillians. So, Madam Speaker, when the opposition member, Single Island-wide District, asks questions on behalf of an investor that I denied an application for an agricultural business, I get worried, Madam Speaker. The investor would have sent the opposition member all of our correspondence. So here we have an investor lobbying an opposition member to put pressure on the government of Anguilla to allow a project that will overrun our farmers. I do have to wonder if we had an investor looking to take over the egg market, if the opposition member would be so close to this investor. Madam Speaker, I have no issue with foreign direct investment. We need FDI, we need foreign direct investment. We need it to drive our economy. And so, Madam Speaker, I wonder who elected the island-wide member in the opposition side? Was it the investor or was it the people of Anguilla? And while he ponders on that, Madam Speaker, I will let you know, Madam Speaker, that it was the people who elected me. I wonder, Madam Speaker, I would like everyone today to know that pressure to approve this project can come, but unless the people, the farmers in particular, are the primary owners and beneficiaries of this project, I will not budge. This government will not budge. This business license was submitted since last year. The investor was also given a letter of interest from the previous government in August of 2019, but yet somehow it still reached to my desk waiting for approval in July of 2020.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to rise on a point of order.
What's your point of order?
The point of order is that the island-wide candidate is imputing my character. I would just like to point out to him that the same persons of Anguilla who elected him are the same persons who elected me, and that my questions are in the interest of their benefit and their benefit alone, not of the investor.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, member.
Madam Speaker,
I don't see the point.
I'm getting to my point. Samuel's here. Oh, go ahead. Yeah. As a young businessman struggling in Anguilla for
member,
years.
I just want to remind you not to impute improper motive according to the rule. So
Madam Speaker, I
continue
apologize.
in
I
that
apologize.
spirit. Thank you. Honourable member, you may continue.
Madam Speaker, Anguilla's economy is a small, fragile economy. And whenever I heard the words, Anguilla is a free, open market economy from the previous administration, I would cringe. They just did not get it. 35 square miles, 13,000 people in a small economy like this. There must be protection. There must be areas reserved in our economy for our people. And this new Business License Act will do just that. Madam Speaker, if we grant that investor if we grant that same investor permission to invest in agriculture, he too will want some form of protection. Because if he invests in Anguilla today, millions of dollars in agriculture, if he invests that in Anguilla today, he wants to make back his investment. But if we approve another agriculture project tomorrow, and another one the month after of the same magnitude, how will the first investor ever regain his investment? This is a small economy. This same investor will want concessions, a form of protection. This investor will want considerations, a form of protection. This investor said that Anguillians, and I hope the members listening, should stick to local crops like pigeon peas, corn, and pumpkin. That too is a form of protection.
Member, address the chair and not the members.
Sorry.
Thank you.
He also said we can set up greenhouses and grow our traditional crops. As if we, the Anguillian people, cannot tap into the technological aspect of farming. Madam Speaker, I have to put these things on the record. So I stand here faced with two options. Do I protect the Anguillian who has not even been given an opportunity to fully realize his or her potential of this market? Or do I protect the foreign investor who is ready from day one to step on the necks of Anguillan farmers. Madam Speaker, we have to establish policies in this new act that will empower our people. Madam Speaker, just in case it wasn't clear, when I, Kyle Jermaine Hodge, took an oath in this honorable house, I took an oath to protect the Anguillan. And in this instance, that protection extends to Anguillan farmers. As I close, Madam Speaker, even the investor who has the money wants and needs protection. This economy is small, fragile, and we understand this. After years of neglect, the people who really need protection are our Anguillan farmers who have not realized their full potential, but the previous administration was ready to sell them out. Madam Speaker, through my engagement with our farmers, I know that they have plans to modernize how we farm. What they need is a partner in government who is ready to protect and provide a true remedy as it pertains to water, and we intend to finally aid them in what they need to advance in this market. Madam Speaker, after so many years of struggles being ignored, the people who need us most are the local farmers who have invested their money. But not only their money, Madam Speaker, they have invested their blood, their sweat, and their tears into farming, into agriculture. The Anguillan farmer, they too have invested, and we will protect them. This government will protect them. The new Business License Act will provide areas in our economy for Anguillan farmers. I will not sit back and allow our farmers to be mocked by Mr. Ralph Bockoff. I will not. He has resorted to smearing my name, and when I addressed him on Facebook, he deleted it, Madam Speaker. This is the type of person that the member on the opposition side is representing and asking questions on behalf, Madam Speaker. This administration will give our local farmers...
Madam Speaker. I made it clear in my earlier point of order that the only persons who I'm asking questions on behalf of and in interest of are the people of Anguilla. Just because my view opposes that of the minister does not impute that I am representing anyone other than the people of Anguilla.
Madam Speaker, the member in the opposition side would have gotten all of the correspondence between myself and Mr. Ralph Bockoff from Island Growers. Okay, that's it. So, Madam Speaker, this new Business License Act will preserve the agriculture sector for Anguillan farmers to modernize, to innovate, and to use science to move this industry forward. Madam Speaker, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Honourable Member. It has been moved and seconded that a bill shortly entitled Business License Moratorium Amendment Act 2020 be now read a second time. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. I call upon the clerk to read a bill a second time.
A bill for Business License Moratorium Amendment Act 2020.
Under Rule 54 of the Legislative Assembly Rules of Procedure, the bill now stands referred to a committee of the whole Assembly to be considered clause by clause. Assembly and committee.
Clauses 1 through 5.
Are there any amendments? I put the question that clauses 1 through 5 do stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it.
The preamble.
Put the question that the preamble do stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those against, say no. The ayes have it. I put the question that the title do stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The Assembly will now resume its sitting.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Although we didn't have any debate on this bill, I do thank everyone for nevertheless supporting this bill.
Can you report?